Hello, podcast listeners. We know podcasts are a great way to catch up on a program that you may have missed on KSJE, and it's provided as a free service of this radio station. But KSJE is now listener-supported, and so while you enjoy this podcast, we hope that you'll also take some time to join KSJE. Become a member today. It's quite easy to do. Just go to our website at ksje.com/support and pick the level of support that best matches your budget. Thanks again for listening. Here's your podcast.
Welcome back to Right on Four Corners. I'm the host, DelSheree Gladden. I'm a USA Today bestselling author of over 30 published novels. And on this week's episode, I have Steele with us. He is going to be talking about the third book in his trilogy called The Trouble with Miracles. Stephen, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, DelSheree. Stephen Mitchell, author, as you said, of the three-book new adventure thriller series, The Trouble with Miracles. And appreciate you having me on the show today.
I'm glad we were able to connect. So you introduce yourself as Stephen Mitchell. Your pen name is Stephen Steele.
Stephen Mitchell, writing as Stephen Steele.
So what made you decide to go with that shift in names? I know that's something a lot of authors kind of ponder when they're first starting out, whether they want to use their given name or some variation or a completely different pen name.
Well, I published as a self-published for a number of years under my legal name, and then when I was signed by a publisher, and my work kind of went to a new level, and rewrote some of my earlier stuff, and it just needed a whole fresh look and a whole fresh approach. And I just kind of like the idea of anonymity. It's great being famous, but nobody knows your face. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, I think that a lot of authors would find that interesting, especially moving from a self-published realm and going with an agent or a publisher. That is a question at times of how to separate before and after if you feel like there has been a significant change in either like genre or style or voice, anything like that. That can be a nice way to make that change and let readers know you're kind of moving in a different direction.
Sure. I mean, who thinks of Sam Clemens? You think of Mark Twain, for heaven's sakes. It's also part of the kind of the romantic mystique of being a writer. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Now, with this series, you've been on the show previously when Tracy Halesvass was hosting, and she was able to read and chat with you about your first two books. So I came into this with the third book, which was a fun experience to kind of pick up the characters after they've already gone through some development. Your original first book started out in the Southwest, and this one isn't as much set in the Southwest. So I just wanted to bring that link since we are usually talking with either writers who live in the Southwest. Yes. And so I wanted to kind of bridge that gap with you there.
No, that's important. The first book was about a cure for viruses that Big Pharma makes illegal. It was called the Kenistar factor. And of course, in an organically grown thing that the government is trying to shut down, it's an epic chase across the country to the East Coast, to the corruption in Washington, D.C., and ultimately Navajo Res in the Four Corners, where they have this just huge Kenistar grow, clandestine, of course, and it involves the Indian Nation there. And it's a wonderful story that brings in the native history, native experience of the area, and definitely the Four Corners. The second book, The Organ Grinder Factor, which is set amid the turmoil in Africa and Israel, but it's about a 3D printer that replaces human organs without the need for surgery. And the two main characters go to Africa initially and ultimately are driven out to Israel to set up their Kenistar grow for the rest of the world. So that's the connection there. And the third one, they come home. This third novel is set up that they come back from all of these horrific adventures and they survive and they say, okay, enough already. Let's settle down and have a family and, and they just kind of get roped into this amazing adventure when another Indian that they know that sponsored their first Kennistar grow, he's a Salish Indian from Montana. His son has gone missing. He's a geologist down in Chile, and he's just desperate to go find him. So he solicits Sid and Alex to go looking for him. So that's the setup that kind of draws them into this third adventure. So the third adventure is not about the Kennistar or the Four Corners per se, but it is the same people who we got to know in the first two books.
And there are still, I noticed, a little bit of a mixture of some of the folklore of the Southwest and also some of the native beliefs. You bring up the Two-Spirit, which I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with that. So I wanted to ask you about that.
In researching, you're a writer, as well as I do, you just research you just like crazy, and thank God for Google,
Yes.
There's a wonderful gay relationship in the book between a Native American geologist who has gone missing down in South America, and his partner is also he's a Chilean geologist down there. In just doing that, I discovered that in the Indian culture, gay people, specifically in this case men, were regarded as two-spirit people, and they are today revered as enlightened people, and they're regarded and treated with great respect and dignity. So they don't have to go through all of this trying to make them equal. They're revered on the reservation. So they call it a two-spirit person, and I thought it was just such a cool way of expressing it. You have two spirits in you. That's not a stretch. That's not fiction. So that caught and endeared me as well.
I really liked the focus on a lot of the relationships throughout the book. And there was a variety. There were romantic relationships, familial relationships, and just the dynamic between the groups of characters that come into play. And it seemed like that was a focus, not necessarily like the main focus of the story, like, saying like, oh, this is a romance story. The focus was definitely on the adventure and the mystery involved. But I did feel like the relationships amongst the different characters really added a lot of depth to the story.
Thank you for saying that. I write adventure thriller series, and that's the marketing or the cover, the pitch, if you will. And that's what they are. Tom Clancy readers, welcome. But really, my writing is about character and relationships and emotions. And that's what you really care. Everything else, background, action, adventure, that's background. That's the scenery. And what you care about, I don't care what genre you're in, you care about the characters and their relationship and their emotions and their feelings and who they are and getting to know them and their growth and their mistakes and how to handle their challenges. So the relationships are really important. So that's what, in my not so humble opinion, makes my adventure stories really good is the characters. And they are, in a lot of the reviews I've had, they're fully flushed out, and they're three-dimensional characters that a lot of people can relate to. And I try to make them very, very different, of course.
And I think it's always interesting teaching writing and being involved in publishing for a long time. You'll see that debate of character-driven versus plot-driven stories. And it's always something that kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit, because if it's all plot and no character development, that's not going to be terribly engaging.
Boring.
That's kind of how I write as well. I stay really focused on the characters, because I do feel like you can have a really interesting plot, but if you don't care about what happens to the characters at the end, why were you invested in how the plot was going to turn out?
Yeah, look at even the most basic cartoons, if you will, I loved them. Indiana Jones. What do we like? Harrison Ford. Holy cow. Star Wars. We liked Han Solo. And, that's what we cared about, even in the simplest of stories. So, yes, it is character, and that's what I write. But I try to tell a good story, and I try to keep it moving. I try to keep the descriptions vivid but simple, not flowery. And create an environment that someone can see pictures in their heads and at the same time enjoy the relationships of the people.
Definitely. And I think you accomplished that. I thought it was a good balance of character and adventure. And going over to the plot, I was interested to know how you went about researching your topics, because you have a really good mix of mythology and science and maybe a little bit of just unexplained elements going on. So there was a lot that you put into the story and the plot and everything. And it was a lot of information, I'm sure, to research and then to boil down into what was going to be pertinent to your plot.
Basically, I sort of write myself into a corner and then figure out how the heck to get out of it. At the end of the second book, I was kind of setting up this third book, and I didn't have any idea what it is, where it was going. And I was just writing the last scene, and I had Clarence, the Salish Indian, retired tech millionaire, talking to Sid and Alex, and he's talking about his missing son, and suddenly he's talking about these lights shooting out of the ground during this increase in violent earthquake activity down in Chile. And I sort of put that in, and okay, I published it, and I thought, oh my goodness, what do I do now? What are these lights, and where do they come from, and how do I figure this out? So I figured I'd really created a challenge for myself. And then as the story evolved, those things just come out. And, as a writer, it's not there and then it is. And it's not there till you need it. And then the moment you need it, then it is. And you go, oh, gee, I need to sound like I know what I'm talking about here. And so then you go Wikipedia again, and in 10 minutes or 30 minutes, you have information. And I find that I enjoy all of these esoteric things. And, for example, this third novel, The Trouble with Miracles, named after the series, is about the discovery of the ancient secret to fusion energy in a desperate race from Chile to Easter Island to keep it out of the wrong hands. So it's about ancient aliens that had this secret and what it is. And so I had to really research fusion energy. But I saw an article this morning on my newsfeed that at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, they have just been able to create fusion where they created more energy than they put into it. It's a huge breakthrough. It's years away from being, decades away from being practical use, but for the first time, they have actually been able to create fusion energy here on Earth where they created more energy than what it took to create it, and that's zero carbon pollution and very, very little radioactivity that dissipates quickly. So it's real. It's coming. So that's the excitement of finding out things even I, as the writer, didn't know.
It's always so interesting when science fiction starts to get a little bit closer to science fact.
Yeah, and that's what creates. Back in the 50s, I grew up on the Destination Moon. It was like my first movie that I thought, oh my gosh, and it just captured my imagination. Those kind of things capture the imagination of a generation or generations and move us forward. Today, we have Elon Musk, and he's got his phone in the Tesla now. That's a satellite. In the very near future, it's going to make the phones we all have in our pockets obsolete. So it moves forward, and like Stephen King said in his wonderful 7-book trilogy, The Dark Tower, one of my favorite quotes: "The world has moved on, gunslinger."
It certainly does, and I think that's a really amazing thing about the creative arts is that you can explore some of those things that maybe we haven't quite gotten to in science or are just ideas, and just see where they might take us. And in your book, you address that a little bit more directly. I don't want to give anything away about the ending, but as they're going through this process of trying to uncover these secrets about fusion and protect it, you do get a little bit into that idea of the responsibility that goes along with scientific discovery and the level at which humanity is at that point. And I thought that was an interesting balance to the adventure and the science fiction side of it and some of the mythology and different things, bringing it back down to a more personal and practical level. And so I just wanted to, dig into your thoughts a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you're a great interviewer, DelSheree. I really like this. We have to remember, it's not in anybody's consciousness. We are a nascent species. We've only been around here a nanosecond in time, and we have a long, long way to go in the evolution. And this is just the beginning. So as we come up with these miracles of science, we have to be very, very careful, because the first thing anybody does with a breakthrough in science is they weaponize it. The atomic bomb, the first thing we did with atomic energy was turn 2 Japanese cities to cinders. I'm not arguing the morality of that, but we have to be very, very careful. And something like fusion energy, especially in the wrong hands, you're going to turn the earth to a cinder. You can rule the world with it. You turn the whole world into a dystopian Marxist society, which is just terrifying. So there is, just in human psychology, enlightenment is responsibility. You have to be responsible for what we do. We can't just walk around blithely destroying things and being ambivalent about our actions. And, what would really happen if you got something so huge, so world-changing, so life-changing? Do you give it to the world? Is the world ready for it? But in Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Rand's wonderful book, that was the real thing. John Galt, he's got this machine that creates energy. Does he give it to the world? Is the world ready for it? Does the world deserve it? It's a really prime philosophical suggestion to explore.
It is. And I think that's another interesting thing about creative arts is that it pushes people to think and consider kind of what some of the fallout or benefits of a certain path or technology or whatever it is. It gets people to have that conversation a little bit more.
Absolutely. You just can't follow the herd off a cliff. And to stop thinking is you have to consider the world. Now, a lot of this wisdom comes with age. When I was younger, I was as clueless as possible. But you have to evolve, and you have to consider the consequences of your actions and your part in the play.
Absolutely. I think that was a really fun aspect of this book is that it pulled so many different elements together, and it was thought-provoking at the same time. I enjoy adventure books and films, but I really like when there's also those deeper elements to them that get me to consider something differently or expand my view of something. And I really enjoyed that about this book.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a way that's not preachy.
Now, I did want to leave time because you did have an excerpt that you wanted to read from Trouble with Miracles. So as we're getting close to that point, I'll take a break from asking questions, and I'm going to let you go ahead and share a section of the Trouble with Miracles with our listeners.
Okay, I'll be happy to. Thanks for asking. This is chapter 1 in the book, The Country at the End of the World, January 10th. The sun burned bright and hot on this steamy summer day in January as the Boeing 737 from Los Angeles turned onto its final approach and settled into a long glide path into Chile's Santiago Airport. Out the left side of the plane, the passengers admired a view of the towering Andes that soared close by and ran the full 2,700-mile length of the long, narrow country from Peru to Cape Horn. Out the right side of the aircraft, they caught glimpses of Chile's 4,000 miles of glittering coastline. And far out to sea beyond the horizon, unseen, lay the Chilean territory of Easter Island, where mysterious stone statues stood as silent guardians of lost secrets that would soon be told. Sid leaned over Alex to look excitedly out the window on the other side of the plane at the white, frothing blue of the Pacific Ocean, then turned back to watch out her window as the plane sank below the 20,000-foot peaks of the volcanic mountains that seemed so close she could almost touch them. In her enthusiasm, she woke Alex up. He made an impatient sound, resettled himself, and went back to sleep. Before leaving Montana, she had been ambivalent about the idea of going all the way down to Chile on a wild goose chase to find the source of some mysterious underground light that may or may not be coming from a new form of energy. That was then. Now that the plane was about to touch down in Santiago, she couldn't wait for her adventure to begin. She looked over at Alex's sleeping form, curled comfortably in the seat beside her, and smiled to herself, thinking how lucky she was to be sharing this amazing life with such an amazing partner. It was a relief when she learned that their friend Clarence, the tech millionaire who was sponsoring their trip, had bought them first-class plane tickets. Alex would have been miserable back in coach with his long legs pulled up under his chin for 14 hours. She smiled again, remembering Africa and how much she loved watching Alex treat their patients in the clinic they had in Senegal. His rapid, gentle, fluid movements were like watching a ballet in hospital scrubs. She marveled at his quiet resolve, once he made a medical diagnosis, at the absolute confidence with which he administered treatment. It was as if his training and his intuition were always working hand in hand. Beyond that, she loved his almost childlike wonder at the world around him. He was a different person when he wasn't with patients. Curious, bold, unafraid, it amazed her how he could be so decisive as a doctor and so completely accepting and non-judgmental about everything else. His patience amazed her, especially since she had so little of it herself. At 34, she had outlived idealism and moral outrage of her youth. The world had moved on, and so had she. The polarizing propaganda that had everyone hating each other back home, the violence and the double talk in the media, it made her never want to see another television news program again as long as she lived. She thought of Canistar and of the Four Corners in their efforts to bring their organically grown cure for viral diseases to the world. It pleased her to think it was relieving so much pain and suffering, so much death. It frightened her as well. With so many people in good health, she was afraid they would use their newfound vigor and vitality to create even more chaos and destruction in the world. Fewer people dying meant more people living longer, and there were already too many people pursuing too many resources. He let one species overrun a planet, she thought, and they'll destroy everything. Before leaving Montana, Helmut Stein had called from Israel. The inventor of the organ grinder was thrilled to report that the money from Sid and Alex's Israeli Canistar grow that funded his research was being put to good use. His 3D printer had already replaced vital organs in a dozen primates in a row without a single failure. Human trials, he added enthusiastically, were scheduled to begin next year. Stein's ongoing success triggered yet another fear in her. They were tampering with the primal forces of nature, and in the process, once again helping to overpopulate the world. The thought was depressing and brought back the memory of the time when they were driving to Bethlehem and their car was hit by a Palestinian rocket. It occurred to her then that thanks to the organ grinder, the world was currently overpopulated by one Sid Seeley, and that thought improved her mood considerably. Her decision at the last minute to come on this trip, however, was based on something else entirely. Truth be told, she hated routine, hated chores, hated the idea of getting up in the morning and doing the same thing day in and day out. After all she and Alex had been through, after the dangers they had faced and the challenges they had overcome, she thought she wanted nothing more than to go home and lead a dull, domestic life. She had tried it for about a week after the wedding and realized she was bored to death. She simply wasn't the domestic type, and that was that. A restlessness burned deep inside her, a need to learn and have fun, to search out new and broader horizons. If she could help make the world a better place in the process, well, she had to admit she wanted that too. She wasn't so much of a cynic that she was ready to give up on the human race just yet. In spite of everything, she still had hope. On both sides of the descending airplane, the passengers now had a good view of Santiago's closely packed high-rises sticking up like shiny spears out of a dull brown urban sprawl that housed some 6 million people. From the cockpit, Captain Daniels had the airport in sight. The air traffic controller's voice crackled over his headphones. American 139er cleared for landing runway 17 right. Cleared for landing 17 right, American 139er, Daniels responded in his best pilot's voice. His co-pilot lowered the landing gear, startling the passengers with a shuddering thud as the gear locked into place. Captain Daniels prided himself on soft, smooth landings. Greasers, he called them. An early career as a Navy pilot taught him to bring a plane in hot and level on carrier decks that were pitching like a bull at a July rodeo. Gliding a 737 into an international airport with barely a brush of its tires on the asphalt, especially on a sunny, windless day like this, was a piece of cake and still a thrill even after all these years. A good landing never failed to make him smile. The number 17R loomed up in 20-foot letters at the end of the runway as the big jet thundered down. The moment its wheels hit, a 7.1 earthquake centered 150 miles off the Chilean coast hit Santiago. The sensation was like landing on a field of boulders. The airliner pinballed down the runway, bouncing from side to side with terrified screams coming from the cabin. Captain Daniels' reverse thrust and the loud whining rush of air, combined with the plane's violent movements, only made it worse for the panicked passengers in back. Brace for impact, a flight attendant cried over the intercom, and a moment later was thrown forward so violently in her harness that she broke a rib and was left gasping for air. Captain Daniels stomped his foot brakes in a frantic effort to slow the plane. As he did, he saw a deep crack opening up in the runway dead ahead. He released the brakes and slammed the throttles forward to try and loft the aircraft over the crevasse, but only managed to raise the nose wheel. The main landing gear disappeared into the hole and was immediately sheared off. The plane dropped onto its belly and began a sickening slide down the runway, careening along the asphalt in a shower of sparks. The tortured screaming and scraping of metal, the howling protest of the engines, the blinding confusion of noise and speed sounded like the end of the world to the horrified passengers. Deprived of its landing gear, the plane skidded off the runway, dug a wingtip into the dirt, spun violently around, and came to a shuddering halt with the ground still shaking beneath it. Back in the fuselage, the desperate passengers bounded out of their seats in a panicked rush to get out. Evacuate, evacuate, evacuate. The captain's urgent shout over the intercom only added to the hysteria. People started climbing over one another in a frantic effort to escape. A crush of bodies piled up in the aisle, trampling one another underfoot as panicked flight attendants struggled to open the doors. Sid lunged to her feet, and Alex grabbed her arm, forcing her to sit back down. Wait, he said, not yet. What about fire, she cried. We're not on fire. You don't know that. If we were on fire, we'd be smelling smoke and seeing flames. What if we do see flames? Then, he smiled grimly, we do panic. The earthquake was shaking the plane so badly that nobody could keep their footing. Alex pushed a man away who had been flung on top of them by the mob, and the man disappeared into a panicked wall of writhing bodies. Sid made another effort to get out, and Alex restrained her. Listen to me, he hissed. You can't force your way out of here. You'll only make things worse and get crushed in the process. Sit tight a minute and we'll be all right. She gritted her teeth and forced a smile. Is the minute up yet? It was several minutes before they managed to squeeze out the door of the plane. A wall of hot, sticky air hit Sid in the face. She stood blinking in the brilliant sunlight. Then someone pushed her from behind, a stomach-churning fall, and Alex caught her at the bottom of the slide. What are you looking so mad about? He asked, amused at the anger on her face. We made it, didn't we? She was furious. I must have been out of my mind wanting to come here. This is a horrible place. I mean, look at that, will you? They don't even try to hide it. He looked where she was pointing and saw a colorful banner hanging from the terminal that read, Welcome to the country at the end of the world. Good place for at the end of the world, she remarked, bending to help an elderly woman who had fallen to her knees and was gasping for breath. The ground stopped shaking, but nobody trusted it not to start up again. Someone threw blankets over their shoulders and was rushing them along amid the pandemonium of flashing red lights, dazed and traumatized passengers and fire trucks screaming to a halt at odd angles around the plane. Helmeted men in heavy clothing jumped out and began stretching out hoses. Sid was a nervous wreck now that the danger had passed. Where's Robert? She cried, casting about with her eyes. He was supposed to be here. I don't see him anywhere. Alex threw off his blanket. Worry about Robert later. Right now we have to help. They're going to need all the doctors and nurses they can get. End of chapter 1.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great start to get people interested. And for those who are interested in reading the trilogy, Trouble with Miracles, and then this third book, which is the newest one, also titled The Trouble with Miracles, Stephen, where can people go to find you and the book?
They can go to Amazon or wherever books are sold. And if you buy it, if you read it, I hope you enjoy it, and let me hear from you folks, because I love connecting with readers.
Awesome. And you have a website they can go to?
I have a website and that they can go to, and also you can find me at Stephen Steele Books on Instagram. I've just discovered it, and I'm exploring it, and Instagram is just a great place to connect with readers. So
it is.
There's other folks who make a success of TikTok, but I haven't quite figured that one out yet.
Oh, neither have I. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on the show this week. I look forward to having you back with your next project.
Well, thank you so much, DelSheree. It was fun. Appreciate it.
Did you enjoy that podcast? I hope that you did. And if you did, share it with your friends. And if you really want to keep podcasts like this coming, please support KSJE. You can do it easily online at ksje.com.